are the ultimate prophet. They are a Latter-day Saint in a way. I think they're all considered Latter-day Saints, but I mean, the prophet, he's like in charge. So him writing a book and using this story in it led a ton of renewed interest in it and credibility behind it. And when he uses that quote, he's basically saying this actually happened. So the common belief, unspoken, is in the Mormon Church that Bigfoot is actually Cain. Almost like, and that would explain why you can't catch him, you can't kill him. He's doomed to wander the planet. So if we caught him, if we proved that it was him, then we just put him in a cage. That's his punishment, is just to walk the earth until the end of time. So it would explain why we can't catch him. Now, it doesn't explain why there are sometimes sightings of multiple Bigfoot, Big Fi, unless he brought his family with him or he continues to have kids. But would they live forever? So next time you see a Mormon, you should ask them. Don't be rude, but just ask them if they've heard this story. And I can almost guarantee it's going to be 50-50. Some of them are going to be like, yeah, it's a fairy tale that, we tell our kids, but I personally don't believe it. And they're most likely being honest. And then other ones will be like, oh yeah, I've heard that before. I don't know whether or not I believe it, but I have heard that story before. Every religion has wacky stories in it. When I was reading about this, there's debate that whether or not Bigfoot could exist at all based on Bible. I was going down the rabbit hole, or the Bigfoot hole on this one. Could Bigfoot exist at all in biblical tradition? And one side says no. The flood would have wiped down Bigfoot. Like if he existed, and if Cain was Bigfoot, that was one of the pushbacks. If Cain really was Bigfoot, the flood would have destroyed him. The flood would have killed Cain/Bigfoot. That would have been the end of it. Other people think that it could be the leftover of the Nephilim, but since the point of the flood was to wipe them out, that's unlikely. Some people think this is post-flood. Some people think it's a dude. This is so funny. The Bible, again, just has the weirdest stories in it. So, there's a dude, there was two sons. There was Jacob. Everyone's shutting the show off now. They're like, I don't want to hear your stupid Bible stories. This one's funny. So there's Jacob, and there's a dude named Esau. Might be saying that wrong, but just bear with me. So God's like, listen, you're going to have twins, but they're going to be separated. One of them is going to be super strong and take command, and most likely the older will serve the younger one. So this woman gives birth, and trust me, this is Bigfoot related. This woman gives birth to Esau first, covered in hair. Absolutely covered in hair. And she's like, I will name you Esau, which means to the baby, and goes, oh man, you're covered in hair. Your name is Harry. Next baby she gives birth to is named Jacob. So they're brothers, and this is like the start of the genealogy of, again, like the Israelites, right? So they said, Jake, one of them was going to help lead the people. And Esau was kind of like just hot-headed, couldn't think of anything. One day he's out, and they don't explain what happened, but he comes barreling into the house, and Jacob is eating some soup. Jacob's eating some lentil soup. Esau walks into the house half dead. No, like 75% dead, and he's like, I need your soup. Oh my God, if I don't eat right now, I'm gonna fall over and die. What he was doing previous to walking into the house, nobody knows. But he walks into the house and he's like, give me some lentil soup. And Jacob goes, I will give you this soup if you give me your birthright. Because Esau was the oldest, he was supposed to be the one in charge. Jacob's sitting there with a bowl of hot lentil soup, and a man is starving to death, doing what, who knows what, just 10 minutes previous. I will give you the soup if you give me leadership of the clan, basically. And Esau goes, at what point is leadership of a clan if I die of starvation right here? So Jacob gives him the soup and takes over. What was he playing, like Fortnite for like 10 days straight? How can you... There's multiple problems with that story, just like moral problems. One, your brother's starving to death, and you're like, I'm just eating soup in front of him and being like, if you give me that. Secondly, what were you doing that you were starving to death? You're like, what a bizarre way to jump into the middle of that story. It's not even that Esau, it says he came in from the open country. That's what we know. But was he just like out? I can imagine him with like sitting in the middle of nowhere with like a piece of wheat in his teeth like Huck Finn, and then going, oh my god, I'm gonna starve to death, and he runs into the house and being like, please give me some soup. Because apparently they had soup. How far away? I don't know. So bizarre. Oh, and I want to say this too. There's a pushback also on Bigfoot being Cain, because a lot of Mormons for a long time, they don't think it so much, but for a long time, they believed that the mark of Cain was you were black. So when everyone was white in the Garden of Eden and Cain kills Abel, they're already kicked out of the Garden of Eden, but so when Cain kills Abel, God goes, anything you do with the ground will produce no harvest, and you will wander the earth forever. And then he made him a black dude. That was a legitimate belief for a long, not legitimate like it makes sense, but there was a belief for a long time. It wasn't until 1979 that the president of the church had a vision, and he goes, you know what? God just told me black people can be members of our church. Now, it's interesting to note, there were, I guess, a few before that, but now they could, like, rise up in the church. It is interesting to note that after he had that vision, they began doing a lot more missionary work in Africa. So it could have been a financial decision, could have been a message from God, I don't know. But so that's been the pushback, because the Bigfoot that David W. Patton describes is both hairy and he was completely black. So you could take that as the skin being black or the hair being black. But yeah, there was a belief for a long time that black people were cursed by the mark of Cain, which makes it kind of complicated, because they said if you kill me, you'll suffer 7 times over, and I don't think there's been much retribution for killing black people. A little bit, but not a lot. Not 7 times worth. So that is the convoluted story of Cain, Esau, Bigfoot. Oh, and I should say that, yeah, they thought Esau might be Bigfoot because he's covered in hair. But, again, it was weird. Like, people will, if you're religious, you will go to your religious text and say, can you help me explain this stuff? And sometimes it can help you explain, like, moral dilemmas you have. But it's not going to tell you whether or not Bigfoot is real. DeadRabbitRadio@gmail.com is going to be our email address. You can also hit us up at Facebook.com/DeadRabbitRadio. Twitter is @JasonOCarpenter. Dead Rabbit Radio is the daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime podcast. I have to go pee so bad. You don't have to listen to it every day, but I'm glad you listened to it today. I have to go. Have a great day, guys. I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, so we're back. I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. That episode, the title alone is actually a selling point for the podcast. I actually didn't know the episode was as old as it was. I think it's like episode 82, and I was having I don't think the show really hit its stride until like episode 100. But this episode turned out really, really well. I actually, when I'm marketing the show, because I'll say paranormal, conspiracy, true crime, a lot of people think of conspiracies as 9/11 was an inside job, Illuminati, stuff like that, stuff they've heard 100 times before, and I stop them. I literally put my hands on their chest and I say, no! Mormon Bigfoot. What? It's one of those episodes that's so bizarre, and I'm glad that it is as good as it is, because older episodes, it sounds like I just woke up to record it. This episode is a little bit in between that Quaalude Jason and then this Jason that's a little more knows how to podcast and is more experienced and knows how to keep the energy up. This episode's great. It's super dense too. I don't know. Most of this episodes are 2 to 3 stories long. This one had 5 stories in about 30 minutes. There was 2 full stories and then 3 little nuggets. But let's go through this real quick. Mormon Bigfoot, there's really not a lot to say on that. That episode, I don't want to pat myself on the back all the time, but again, I think it's structured perfectly. That's not patting myself on the back, right? I'm an expert. The little song, that was a joke when I was recording, and then when I was editing, I go, let's see if we can find a little song. It took me an extra hour to find that song, because it has to be free use and all this stuff. But it's just small enough, just adds a little bit of detail. It's not overwriting. I love the story. I enjoy the way I presented it. I have a lot of fun listening to this episode. It is a selling point for the show. So Mormon Bigfoot, you'll always live long in my heart. The other The Nazi one, I get a lot of requests. I wouldn't say a lot, but I do get quite a few requests to cover Nazi stuff. I don't, because I think it's too mainstream. Nazis building space weapons, living in Antarctica, on the moon, the Fourth Reich, all this stuff. There's been so many movies, comic books, you got Hellboy, you can hear the excitement in my voice as I'm talking about this subject. To me, it's so done. Movies and cartoons, I don't know if they've had cartoons like that, but you know what I mean, like, it's just so overdone. Nazi conspiracies, they don't get my goat running. It's not something that I'm looking for. The reason why I covered this one was because I have always heard this story about the Nazis and the occult, and they were building this spaceship, and maybe they flew to space and stuff like that. And I obviously was like, yeah, maybe some of it's true. I don't think they actually flew to Aldebaran or wherever they went, but, you know, I've always heard that. But for whatever reason, I don't remember if this story is recommended. It's been a while since I've listened to this. I listened to it in preparation for this, but it's still been a while. For whatever reason, I was looking into this story, and I found out that it was, like, based on a fictional novel, like 10 years after the war. And that, see, what gave me the hook. I would not have covered it if it was just like, some people believe that Nazis built a spaceship and went to space, because there's movies based on that. That's super well known. That's not even a conspiracy theory at this point. It's a trope. But when I found out that there was a suggestion it was all fake, and that Hitler thought that the occult was a waste of time, I was like, those are interesting things. Like, you did have people in the Nazi government who were into this, but Hitler was like, whatever, guys, whatever, just do what you guys do. Just don't bring me in on it. Don't play Charlie while I'm trying to give this speech. So I thought that was fascinating. Again, I can cover those mainstream conspiracy theories if I can find a different spin on them. I'll mention 9/11 and I'll mention Illuminati from time to time because they're so well known, but I've never done a full episode, I don't think, on either of those. I did an episode on Are the Illuminati the Good Guys? Because, see, that's a different twist to that conspiracy theory. I'm not going to sit down and talk to you about the 13 families and go through the bloodlines and stuff like that. It doesn't interest me. There's 100 books on that. If you want to research it, you can research it. Almost for free, really for free. And that's the same thing I look at Nazi conspiracies. One, I don't find them super intriguing to begin with, and two, they're everywhere, and you can find them anywhere. So if I can find an interesting spin on them, yeah, I'll cover it. But other than that, it's pretty just pretty normal conspiracy theory stuff. It's funny because this episode, and this is going to be a long outro. This almost feels like it's going to be its own episode. I talk about 3 more subjects, so let me try to figure out the way I want to discuss them. One, let's talk about the solar observatory story, the Sunspot Solar Observatory. That is an episode, I covered that. That was a that was a popular conspiracy theory. The difference is that it was brand new. It was happening as I was recording the show. The Nazi stuff's the Nazi stuff. It's been around forever. The reason why I didn't cover the Wayfair conspiracy theory, see, Wayfair I probably would have covered if it was happening while I was recording. But since I'd already recorded 3 weeks of episodes and I was gone, and that story popped up, and then it became such big news, I was like, if they want to know about this, they can research it. You didn't even have to research it. It was all over the news. I thought about doing an episode just on how the media reaction to it made it even weirder. I don't know what to make of the Wayfair thing. I honestly don't know how to take that, but I think the media's reaction to it, it's so bizarre. The media will be like, this isn't true. This bizarre conspiracy theory isn't true, and they'll lay it out in their newspaper, and I'm reading it, and I'm thinking, now people do believe it. 100% believe it now. So it's bizarre. It's almost like the media is fueling the fire. I honestly probably could do an episode on Wayfair and see, that's the thing. Like, I'd want to find a new angle to it. We've all heard about Wayfair. I'd have to kind of figure out where I'm at on it right now, because it is highly suspicious. It's super, super suspicious, okay? But I know a lot of it's been debunked, but it's still really, really suspicious. But I could do an episode on the media circus surrounding it. See, I always like to kind of bring in a new angle to it. But sorry, this is almost like its own episode, this outro. Sunspot Solar Observatory, we talked about it on this episode. I did its own episode on it. The FBI said that they arrested some guy because he had child porn and he was threatening people in the laboratory. Those were two people you don't want working for you, right? The child pornographer and the guy with the knife. It's a bad combination when they're both the same employee. The FBI swooped in, took him to this